Welcome to NeverTheLess podcast with Bidemi Mark-Mordi, a show dedicated to organic leaders and leaderpreneurs. Today, you would learn how to discover your essence and live more powerfully.
Hi, it's another week and another Friday. It is time for NeverTheLess, a show for organic leaders and leaderpreneurs. My name is Bidemi Mark-Mordi, and we've been on the series, Wholeness. Last week when we started this series, we looked at the subject matter of wholeness. We looked at the definition of wholeness, what wholeness was. We said that wholeness is a lacking of alignment and stability in one's core or center. We looked at brokenness, which is the raw material for wholeness. We looked at why brokenness is something we do not talk about. We looked at the man at the pool of Bethesda in John chapter 5 and how Jesus asked him, "Do you want to be made whole?" Today we're moving on to another episode, and today's episode is titled, "What is wrong with you?" If we went back to the story or the account in John chapter 5, where Jesus walked up to the man at the pool of Bethesda and asked him, "Do you want to be made whole?" I think that if I had to translate it, Jesus was asking beyond an opinion. I don't think that Jesus was asking the man his opinion on wholeness. I think what Jesus was trying to help that man see is what exactly was wrong with him. Why was it that he had been at the same spot for 38 years and he had refused to get up and move? You see, when life does all the things that life tends to do to us, like trauma-induced pain, loss, and all of those things that happen, a man has to take responsibility and decide to ask himself the top question. You see, when you ask the right questions, the idea is that you get the right answers. So when Jesus said to the man, "Do you want to be made whole?" From the man's response, you will know that Jesus was trying to highlight something to him. That it was not the fact that he couldn't go deep in the water, that he had been there for 38 years, but because he had lacked the willpower to try beyond the norm. Asking yourself, what is wrong with me, is to come to the place where you are able to say to yourself, I know this is not normal. Something has to have gone wrong somewhere. And do the work of determining, or at least asking yourself over and over and over until you know what the answer is. If you're a praying person like me, pray and ask that God will open your eyes to see what it is that triggers you in the things that you do. A man that has anger issues, for instance, every little thing, he's so angry, he's slamming doors, he's breaking stuff, he's pulling knives and cutlasses, needs to sit down when he's sober enough to ask himself, what is wrong with me? That's a question that you don't ask it rhetorically. It's not what is wrong with me and then you sit down. It's not what is wrong with me and well, it's not my fault. It is a what is wrong with me because you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're saying, I have a vested need to know why I act the way that I act. I have an investment in knowing and discerning why I do the way I do. I am committed to finding a solution for the way I am today. So I must ask myself the question, what is wrong with me? In the course of my work, I get to coach and counsel people who had lived with trauma for a long time. And one of the things I try to do is to take them back to the point where it first broke. Because if you find where it first broke, the odds are you will find how to fix it. It reminds me of the account in the book of Kings when Elisha and the sons of the prophets invited Elisha to go tree felling with them so that they can come and enlarge the place of their tent. And they got there and one of them was trying to cut down a tree and the axe head fell and sunk into the river. He screamed immediately and he said, "My father, alas, it was borrowed." You see, the man, it wasn't just about the fact that he lost an axe head. He knew that it was double jeopardy if he lost the axe head that belonged to someone else. In that moment, guess what? He was saying to others, I couldn't afford an axe head of my own. I had to borrow. And now it looks like I've lost what belongs to another. That's a man that acknowledges or a man that acknowledged where he was broken and he was looking for a fix. The Bible doesn't tell us what happened after the axe head floated. But I have a feeling that he probably would have been liberated enough to not have need to borrow an axe head should he have to go tree cutting the next time. The point I'm making is you don't ask yourself what is wrong with you so that you can beat yourself down. You ask yourself what is wrong with me so that you can seek solutions. Like I said, it doesn't matter how brokenness came upon your life, which will mean that it may not be your fault. 80% of the time, it's not our fault. But we have the responsibility to determine that we will be healed. To be able to ask yourself the question, what is wrong with me, is to say, I know, is the first step in acknowledgement. I know something is wrong. I may not know what is wrong, but I'm committed to finding out what is wrong so that I can fix it. The man at the beautiful gate had many reasons. Jesus said to him, do you want to be made whole? Jesus was not asking, do you want to be healed of whatever your ailment was? What Jesus was saying, or what Jesus said to him was, do you want a life that is in alignment? You want a life that is together? Do you want a life that is not lacking anything, not breaking anything, not losing anything, and not missing anything? Surely that was not what he sat there for 38 years for. Jesus was saying, beyond the fact that you have this particular ailment, the Bible doesn't tell us what it is. Your life is broken in other places because this thing is not enough to keep you at the edge of a pool for 38 years. It's not because it is not valid, but if your mind was not broken along with your body, you would have found a way around this thing. Marriages don't just fail. Marriages fail when the two people within the marriage refuse to ask themselves, what is wrong with me? You see, the thing about brokenness is we see it in everybody. We just don't see it in ourselves. And how do we deal with it? We say things like, it's just how I am. It's just how I am. And we are there, and because we think that brokenness is how we are, it means that we will not be invested in looking for solutions that will bring us to wholeness. We use expressions like, rather than ask ourselves, what is wrong with me? We use expressions like, nobody is perfect. The thing is that imperfection is not the same as brokenness. Because a potter could do a clay pot, could mold a clay pot, and it's functional in everything. But because it doesn't look according to the picture that he designed it to be, that is, maybe the handle is not exactly the shape he wants, he can say this particular clay pot is imperfect. But that clay pot is not lacking anything. It is able to hold water or cook or do whatever it is supposed to do. But as men, when we say, oh, no one is perfect, what we're saying is imperfection is the same thing. That man's imperfection is the same thing as my brokenness. We need to recognize that brokenness is something that fundamentally takes away from our stability. But imperfection doesn't usually take away from our stability. And so when you ask yourself, what is wrong with me? You have to be willing to say, I do not think that because I'm imperfect, it is the license for brokenness. Because when we usually say that, or when we say to ourselves or to others, no one is perfect, what we're really saying is, I do not want to be accountable for what is not right with me. So it's an excuse we give to say, well, if this is what my own brokenness presents as, who knows what the other man's brokenness presents as? And until you are able to tell what his brokenness presents as, and if he is able to fix it, then you don't need to bother me about my own brokenness. Here's the thing. In Psalm 139, the Bible says that we are fearfully and we are wonderfully made. What that means is that we may be imperfect, because perfection is objective. Somebody thinks that he has to be 6'4" to be a perfect hunk. For another person, 5'7" is just fine for perfection. So perfection will vary depending on the other circumstances that surround it. But brokenness is not so. A broken man is a broken man in Nigeria, as a broken man is a broken man in Australia. It's not the same as not meeting a standard. Brokenness is not about not meeting a standard. Brokenness is about taking things, that do not work and owning them and making them how your life ought to be. The point that I've been trying to make in this session of today's episode is that we must look ourselves in the mirror and we must ask ourselves, what is wrong with me? To recognize that just because we are functional does not mean that we are whole. Functional is not the same as being whole. We say things like, oh, I am okay. I am okay simply means I can go to work, I can come back, I can smile and pretend through it. But it is not the same as being whole. Just because you can get up and go and pay your bills, drop your children in school, come back home, make dinner, do the laundry, does not mean that if something is broken in you, that you are fine. Because brokenness goes beyond how we act. Brokenness extends to how we see ourselves. Brokenness extends to how the way we see ourselves affects other people. I remember a while ago, we were in the middle of some session and someone actually just broke down and started to cry because we were trying to get into the truth of who we are. And the person said, I have not looked in the mirror for X number of years because I do not see myself as pretty. And I couldn't understand that a woman had not looked in the mirror for even 1 week, let alone for a number of years. And the simple reason is because she's been told over and over and over that she has come to believe that she's not beautiful. And because she didn't want to be reminded that she was not beautiful, she did not look in the mirror. You know that now means that it meant that her grooming did not exist for her. She would just do her hair whatever she wants. She would no makeup, no nothing. Because as far as she was concerned, she had settled. I've been told that I'm not beautiful, so it really doesn't matter how hard I try. It will not make any difference. Why we must ask what's wrong with me is that for that person, she says I'm not beautiful is beyond the fact that she was not good enough. It is a belief system that was faulty and needed to be taken care of. When I say you should ask yourself, are you okay? I'm saying to you that to run around and say it is not that bad is not the best. If it is below the best that God is ordained for you, then you should be bold enough to stop and ask, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Another slang or crutch we use to shy away from asking this question is, it's not a big deal. It is a big deal if it is affecting who you are. It is a big deal if who you are is affecting the next person. What am I saying? The first step to arriving at wholeness is to be able to ask ourselves, what is wrong with me? Because until you ask and answer that question, you'd have gaps that you cannot fill. And it means that you'll not be able to bring yourself to take responsibility for the journey to wholeness. I'm going to take a break. When I come back, we would explore this same question, what is wrong with me? Looking at other aspects of it. And hopefully this is making sense. Remember, the show is the Nevertheless show, and my name is Bidemi Mark-Mordi. Please don't go away. I'll be right back.
In a world filled with many fears and discouragement, life often becomes a burden. For those who know the way, life is just simple. Do not worry, you're not alone on this life's journey, as Bidemi Mark-Mordi shares powerful insights and principles from her everyday work and life experiences in her book, NeverTheLess. NeverTheLess is a book designed to encourage and equip you to face life with courage, hope, and determination. Get a copy of NeverTheLess and other books written by Bidemi Mark-Mordi, like The Wisdom of the Seed, Honor, The Theology of Work, and so much more from a bookstore nearby, or call 080-905-63555, or send an email to bidemi@bidemimarkmordi.com to place your order. I guarantee you will make it, nevertheless.
Welcome back to the Nevertheless show, a show for organic leaders and leaderpreneurs. We're in the series Wholeness, and this episode is titled, What is Wrong with You? Before we went on a break, I told us that when Jesus said to the man at the pool of Bethesda, do you want to be made whole? In my estimation, Jesus was asking the man, what is wrong with you? Because sometimes what is obvious is not what is wrong. Say, for instance, someone who has anger issues. And so, there are things that happen and they go really angry and they begin to misbehave. All of us will say he's an angry man, but what is wrong with him is not anger. There's something that triggers anger in him. And until he sits down to ask and answer the question, what is wrong with me? The chances are high that he would never know what to do so that he can step away from anger. And that's why this question is important if you want to break free of brokenness and get into the place of wholeness. In the Old Testament of the Bible, we read the account of the man Moses. Moses was this child whom, when his mother was pregnant for, word had gone out that God was raising a deliverer amongst the people. And then the Pharaoh of the time had given an injunction that anyone, because they felt that Israel was overproducing, and that meant that their population of the Israelites in Egypt was going to overwhelm the population of the Egyptians. So they decided that every male child that was born had to be killed at birth. Moses was one of the children that was conceived in that era. The Bible said that Moses' mother hid her pregnancy until she had him. And when she had him, she hid him for another 3 months until it became impossible to hide him. At that point, she wove a basket and she put the child in it and put the child on the Nile River. His older sister Miriam, was running along the river bank as his basket flowed downwards because she wanted to see where her brother ended up. Long and short of the account is that Moses got adopted by Pharaoh's daughter. He was raised in the palace. And you will think that because of that, first he was sent back to his mother to win him. And then after that, he was taken into the Pharaoh's palace and he was raised in the palace. You will think that for someone who was raised in the palace, that whatever it is that, that experience of being put on the Nile and all of that would have done to his psyche, that it wouldn't matter. But Moses, even while he was at the palace, never forgot that he was one of the ones who was sought after, which meant perhaps in his heart, he didn't think that he was worthy to live. While Moses was in the palace, when he turned 40, one day he went out and he saw that there was an altercation between a Jewish person and their Egyptian supervisor. He intervened, and in the altercation that ensued, he killed the Egyptian and then he buried him. The next day he came back and it was one Jew against the next Jew, or one Israelite against the next Israelite. As he tried to intervene to say to them, your brothers, you shouldn't do this, The other one blew his cover. Do you want to kill me the way you killed the Egyptian yesterday? And that's how Moses had to flee from Egypt, from Pharaoh's presence. And that put him in the desert for another 40 years. But God had a plan for Moses. Ultimately, that plan was for him to come back to Egypt and liberate the children of Israel and lead them out of slavery, which he came back and he did. But do you know that the Moses that God called to lead the people of Israel into the promised land ended up not making it into the promised land? In my book, Foxes and Fixes, I talk about the foxes, that is the things that were wrong with men and how they fixed them for those who fixed them. Sadly, Moses was one of the ones who did not fix his fox. It was something that made him less than who God called him to be. But because he never fixed it, he never quite got around it. What was the thing that stopped Moses from getting into the promised land? God told him to speak to the rock to bring forth water for the children of Israel. Yes, the children of Israel at this point were irritable and they were incalcitrant. But God had given Moses specific instructions. His instruction was speak to the rock so that water would come and then the people would drink. But Moses was so upset that he struck the rock and he spoke crudely to the people. Anger well out of Moses. And when I was studying, my thing was, what made Moses the one that could intercede with his life for these people get so offended and angry? And I realized that if you take a look at Moses' life, if Moses had lived in our day, then it was impossible that Moses would not have a soul wound, a child whose parents could not take care of him. They put him on the Nile River, a child that was taken from the Nile River and sent to his biological parents. By the time he was weaned, he had to forcefully leave because his mother could not even bear to see him outside on the street and say, "I'm your mother." Took him back to Pharaoh's palace. No matter how he was raised as an Egyptian prince, I have a feeling that Moses always remembered that he was not one of them. And all of that only has one thing that it can do. It can either make a man doubt himself or it can make a man angry. And by the time, in the moment where it mattered the most, that fox reared its head. What was wrong with Moses that he never confronted was the reason why he didn't make it into the promised land. In the book Foxes and Fixes, I also spoke about Gehazi. Gehazi was the servant of Elisha. Elisha was Elijah's servant. And when Elijah was going to be taken up by God, Elisha pressed in and interceded, and he got a double portion of what was upon Elijah, which meant that it was possible for Gehazi to get a double portion of what was on Elisha in anointing, which would mean that he got 4 times what was upon Elijah. But Gehazi had a fox. His fox, everybody says his fox was greed. Greed was how his fox manifested, but his fox was not greed. Gehazi had the fox of blindness. He couldn't see the future with hope. So when Naaman came and Naaman was healed of leprosy, and Naaman brought a gift to Elisha, and Elisha said, "I would not be taking a gift from you." Because Gehazi could not see the future with hope. If he was thinking, if my boss is not taking payment for the things that he does, the chances are very high that we're going to die in poverty. The Bible said he ran after Naaman and he collected what he wasn't supposed to get. And before him to get the gift from Naaman, he had to lie that Elisha sent him to come and get them. In the end, he was confronted by Elisha. And the end was that the leprosy that was upon Naaman came upon him. Here's the point that I'm making without sounding like I'm threatening or stressing or trying to scare us. When we do not confront what is wrong with us, we would give ourselves to something that is inconvenient. We will manifest in the most inopportune time, and it will mess up everything that we worked for. Moses worked too hard to only see the promised land from the top of the mountain. if he had just done what he needed to do, if he had confronted the pain that he felt, the pain of betrayal by his own brother and sister, when they confronted him and said to him, "Are you the only one who's anointed?" That the Lord came and dealt with by calling forth leprosy to put upon Miriam. If he had just dealt with it, if he had processed his hurt, if he had dealt with it and had brought himself to healing. I do not know, because I did not write the Bible and I'm not God. But if I'll follow the sequence of things, perhaps Moses would have made it into the promised land. Here's the point. The point is that we may not, and I'll keep repeating this in every episode, we may not be responsible for what broke us. It may not be our fault, but it is our responsibility to find our way to wholeness. And one of the ways to do that is to settle down and ask ourselves, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Why is it that I'm angry all of the time? What is it about this scenario that triggers, the capacity to want to quit in me? What happened in this place that's brought me to this thing? If I went back to the account about the axe head that fell, the question that Elisha the prophet asked, the son of the prophet who lost the axe head, was not, "What were you doing with the axe head when it fell?" His question was, "Where did it fall?" Because here's the point. If you can ask yourself, where did it fall? What broke me? Who broke me? When was I broken? All of these are embodiments of the question, what is wrong with me? If you are able to ask and answer what is wrong with me, guess what? Then it means that you are 50% close to fixing what went wrong. I facilitate a retreat known as the My Powerful Mind Retreat. And that retreat is exclusively for people who have, who have depression or depressive bouts, and people who have been plagued in their mind based on the things that they've had to go through. When they come to me, it's not the fact that something is wrong that we celebrate. Asking yourself what is wrong with me is not so that you can beat yourself down. Asking yourself what is wrong with me is so that you would know that you're not the first person that something is wrong with, and that there is a solution to every break, and there is a solution to every hurt. But unless you ask yourself what is wrong, and you are able to go back and, articulate it, how are you going to ask for help? What is wrong with me is the question that those who want to take responsibility for their wholeness must ask. Just as Moses never confronted his issues and he didn't make it into the promised land, and Gehazi never really saw that his problem was that he couldn't see the future with hope. And because of that, he took on a leprous spirit that wasn't his to take. You don't want to be that person who, because you did not ask yourself what is wrong, end up doing things that would make you never want, would make others never want to see you. You don't want to be the father who, because of abuse, loses his family just because he didn't stop to ask, why do I abuse the ones that I love? Because he did not stop to ask, who else did this in my family? What is the trigger? Because when you ask what is wrong with me, it is the question that seeks and to know so that it can be fixed. When we come next week, we'll be looking at another episode on wholeness. But the point that I'm talking about today, or that I have talked about today, is that the wounded spirit dysfunction can contribute to what is wrong with us. But if it is familiar to us, if it is all that we know, the chances are high that we will not know that that is what is wrong with us, which is why we must ask questions. In asking what is wrong with me, most of us need help. We need help outside of ourselves. See a therapist. Go and sit with a counselor. Speak with your spiritual leader, your pastor. Whatever you do, sit down and say, I act in a certain way, and I don't think that is normal. What is wrong with me? Can you help me? Perhaps if you go to professionals who have the right questioning, or they will be able to process out of you what is truly wrong. Because unless you know what is wrong with you, you will not be able to find the right answer. You will not be able to find wholeness, and you'll not be able to embrace the life that God has called you to. It's been the NeverTheLess show. My name is Bidemi Mark-Mordi. We've looked at episode 2 of the series Wholeness. We've asked the question, what is wrong with you? Please remember that, again, what broke you may not be your fault. The responsibility to become whole is yours. And asking the question, what is wrong with you, is how you take the first step in that journey. Thank you so much for joining and for keeping the faith to look at this episode. Please remember to follow me on my social media handles across board. The name is Bidemi Mark-Mordi. And please remember to share this podcast far and wide. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next week. Remember, if you discover purpose, you will live powerful. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to NeverTheLess. For more information and resources, call 080-90563-555 or send an email to bidemi@bidemimarkmordi.com. Don't forget, discovering your purpose helps you live more powerfully.